are. So this is, as we always say to everyone, you know, what exactly are we here for? So hopefully after today you'll learn a little bit more about PSR, RPS Canada. You will also understand a little bit more about the definition of competence and why it's so important to practice. You'll hear a little bit about where we came from with this, with the history of the competencies as we worked on it. And specifically, we're going to give you a more in-depth look into the practice competencies, the 6 of those, and the performance indicators. And finally, we're going to challenge you to think about how you can apply and advance PSR practice competencies to facilitate recovery. Just exactly how does that all come together? Our agenda is, as we said, we're going to be talking a little bit about the overall look of PSR, RPS Canada. We're going to introduce the competencies. We're going to apply them via a case study. And folks, what you get out of this is whatever you put into it. So we're going to be putting up some case studies and suggesting that you think about it. If there's only one of you sitting there, you can talk to yourself. I do it all the time. Or if there's a group of you, you might want to take a few moments to throw around some ideas. And of course, we're going to be talking about our next step and how we're going to move forward on this. We have been working for quite a while, and we really need to give a big extra thanks to all the validation panel who have volunteered their time of experts and consultants, and they all have volunteered their time to make sure that we were able to get all this done. The volunteers who worked on it from across the country, we're going to be getting them on in, you'll be seeing their names at the end of the presentation. So PSR, RPS Canada, Psychosocial Rehabilitation, Readaptation Psychosocial is, who are we? Well, we're about 11, 12 years old, and we've identified for you our vision and our main objective. So really what we are is we're really trying to be the leader, not the leader, but a leader in transforming the mental health sector to be a society where people achieve full social inclusion. Our main objective is to advance education about psychosocial rehabilitation approaches in mental health systems and services. As we've been moving forward, we find that there's a lot of misunderstandings around exactly what PSR is. You know, does it exclude this, that, or the other? And we're really trying to make sure people understand that it's a very inclusive system. It includes medical. It includes a number of other models. PSR Canada, our mission statement is quite simply, we want to be a leader, again, not the, but we're working with our partners in transforming the mental health sector through education, research, and knowledge exchange. We are very committed to the promotion of social inclusion, recovery, and well-being of everyone. So what is psychosocial rehabilitation? It's actually got a fair bit of history to it. The definition that we're using here came from Marianne Farkas, and most of you are probably very familiar with Marianne's work. She's been around for quite a bit and has given an incredible amount to the field, along with Bill Anthony and a number of other folks. So basically what we're saying is psychosocial rehabilitation is a set of principles. It's practices, values, and ethics aimed at facilitating recovery with and for people who live with illnesses such as schizophrenia. But it could be any kind of mental illness, and we also are aware that people who have addictions issues as well also very much benefit. There's additional skills and competencies, of course, but much of the PSR is very adaptable. So this is your moment. What is the purpose of our competencies, now that you've had a look at it? So this is where you get to go ahead and vote. And Matt has got this all set up. We're basically looking at what is the purpose. Is it to help staff identify learning needs? Is it to help staff acknowledge their strength? Is it for accreditation? Or is it number 1 and number 2? Has everybody voted? Oh, there's a few more coming in. I don't want to cut anybody off. Matt, I'm not exactly sure when. Oh, there it is. Matt's making the magic happen. It seems to me that most of you certainly do understand, and it is number 1 and number 2. It is, at this point, it's not necessarily an accreditation, but it is indeed number 1 and number 2. So congrats to all of you who've been paying attention for the last 11 minutes. Good job. Good job. So what are we doing? You know, we say, okay, we've got this. What are we actually, what is the purpose of this framework? Like, why do we really need these? Well, first of all, because there are so many misunderstandings or knowledge bases or so on and so forth, and all across the country, we really want to put together a national standard for the assessment of competency. Like, exactly how are we going to do this? If someone is saying they're doing PSR, Recovery-Oriented Practice in Vancouver, is that going to look different in Regina or Halifax? We wanted to put together a standardized set. So frankly, those Canadian PSR practitioners can say, hey, you know what? I do this, and I do this well, and I'm very competent in my profession. And also, we wanted to put together something for, we've been getting a lot of requests from trainers, from educators saying, you know, exactly, if we're going to be putting together information for our students, what do we need to be basing those on? So it's really going to be a resource for folks who are putting education, training curricula, professional development, even to recruiting practices, performance evaluation, and strategic workforce planning. It's all that about as we move forward in this, and those of us who've been around it for a very long time are really pleased to see how many younger people are getting involved and how they are so proud of their profession. So we have to be able to do that. And also, for some of us, and I remember this happened to me years ago, but you know, we've had staff turn up, and in this case for us it was a psychiatrist, and yes, a wonderful psychiatrist, but didn't believe that people could have recovery. Well, that was a performance issue because they didn't believe in the basic common philosophy that we were carrying. So I was looking at that. So here we go. You can start right at the very beginning, right from recruitment, through orientation, through job descriptions, through interviewing. It's not only the clinicians that can be very excited about this, but it's also the human resources folks. Performance evaluation, continuing education, continuing professional development, building block, you know, the building block for, you know, what is excellence in our field? What can we say to people? Look, if this is happening correctly, you know you've got a professional in here. And a lot of questions that we were getting from people was, you know, what am I supposed to do? If I am doing PSR, recovery-oriented practice, what's that supposed to do? How am I supposed to do it? And how am I supposed to know if I'm doing it correctly? Most professionals, and certainly I'm confident the folks in our field, are very keen on learning how to do things better. So we ask, what else can I do? We really were looking to have those kind of questions answered. So when we go forward on that, we went, well, what exactly is competence? Well, we said it's a statement regarding the skills, knowledge, attitudes, values, and abilities required for effective performance of a specific role or function. They are measurable. They are skills and attitudes needed to effectively perform a particular function or role. And I know there's been issues that people, you know, have said, well, can a nurse reflect PSR, recovery-oriented competencies? Absolutely. This is one of those issues where it's cross profession. So it doesn't matter if it's a rehab worker or a housing worker or a nurse or a psychiatrist or the receptionist or the executive director. It's something that really needs to be embedded because it's about knowledge, attitudes, values. So they've also got to make sure that they're dynamic. We've got to make sure that we're, you know, staying on top of what is those kinds of things that we know are best practice, that are leading practice. That, and I got to admit, I'm not a big best practice person. I prefer better practice. What are the things that are out there that are happening that we can make sure that we're staying on top of what's going on in our field? And of course, we know that competencies have the potential to improve our quality of service and our service outcomes, because we can look at the people who are providing the service, that's the staff members, and looking at saying, okay, how can we make sure they've got the best possible education, the best possible training, and an evaluation that will help them grow in developing their competencies to move forward and to provide outstanding service to the clients. I don't know of anyone who wouldn't have that as a key issue. The actual, as we get into them then, you'll see the actual performance indicators are, for example, Unit 1, the first one is on cultural safety. And then we actually do have underneath that some specific examples of what that means. Because that was, you say, okay, sure, everybody needs to be culturally safe. But what exactly does that mean to me as a professional in this field? And we actually identify that for folks. The rationale, I guess, around why we develop this is simply because, as I mentioned earlier, the confusion, the lack of understanding of what it was, and it actually came forth from our whole membership of PSR, RPS Canada. I think it was when we were in Halifax, Dorothy, at the wonderful conference you guys had for us, and very much the membership at those meetings kept on saying, yes, this is a priority for us. We really need to move ahead because there is that gap. You know, people are trying to struggle to figure out where they need to do it, but really where they need to fill in the gaps. But we really need to understand what the standards are and how we need to develop that curriculum. So we put together the Competency Task Force. There was PSR experts across Canada, and there, again, is a listing of them at the end of the program. Probably close to 15 of us, anyway, in the spring of 2011, gathered here in Kingston, actually, Party Town, and we had a face-to-face meeting for a weekend. And we really sat down, we went through with an expert on registries and competencies, like how we were going to pull together the structure and work plan. And then we started working and working and more work. So we put together the core practice competencies. We had it validated by a national panel of PSR experts, included peers, family members, researchers, administrators. And I want to mention again that this was all done by volunteers. Everybody who's been involved in this project has done it because of their commitment to our field. 2012, we actually presented them in Winnipeg and had them, sort of formally launched at the same time when we talked about our partnership with the Mental Health Commission. Okay. Regina, I'm looking. No, I guess it's still me. Sorry. Here we go. Okay, so when we go into these, we ended up with 6. Now, there has been an incredible amount of discussion, as you can appreciate, of any time you try and put together a document that everybody can agree on. So, and as we all know that these things are living documents, and what we have here probably won't what we'll have in maybe a year. It will be very similar, I trust, but we'll continue to examine how we can make sure it's the best they can be. So we've ended up with 6 categories. The first one is culture and diversity. The second one was all around professional skills. The third one was around psychosocial rehabilitation, practicing, and supporting services. Some of you, when you look at that, you will go, really? And yes, this actually came to us when we, a bunch of us had gone to a meeting of national folks, and we realized there was just a complete lack of understanding where you could use PSR practices. The knowledge of PSR rehabilitation and recovery-oriented services, making sure people know about them. Relational skills, of course, and social inclusion. When you look at the whole thing overall, we came up with 24 competencies within those 6 areas, those 6 categories. But then we also looked carefully at what were the performance indicators. And that's where we came up with 104 of those. So within each competency, we really tried to drill down. What does that mean? What does that look like? How does that impact me as a practitioner? Make sure I know these. I'd like to introduce Regina, who will carry on.
Section, which is thinking about how the competencies can be applied to please think about the competencies as if they were behavioral representations of the ideas within those 6 sections. So the next section moves to really think about a case study, and that it may help us just apply those ideas in practice. So let us introduce you to Larry. And Larry also is available on the website for download. But just briefly to give us a sense of how we might consider applying the competencies to this gentleman, Larry. He's 38 years old, born in Hong Kong, and emigrated with his wife 10 years ago. He divorced about 3 years ago, but remains deeply connected to his family of origin. He earned a PhD in mathematics in Hong Kong. Just adjusting volume. But this kind of work is too stressful now. He sometimes feels pressure to do a job well, and this impacts his ability to function. Larry is a proud dad to Jim, who's now 8 years old, and Jim lives with his mum, so they see each other twice weekly. Larry was diagnosed with schizophrenia 10 years ago. He likes his medication regime, quit smoking, lost weight recently. Larry likes to cook, be on the internet, walk, and read. Larry attends the local clubhouse where he has a janitorial job and does peer support work, and he likes this routine and says that he is happy that he can contribute to others. He would like to make more friends, find a new partner, and have a good paying job. So that just gives us a bit of a sense of this person, and with that we are going to consider applying the first competency, which is culture and diversity. So you'll remember that there are 4 competencies within this section, and we'll give you an example of a performance indicator. So A1 indicates that the person demonstrates an awareness of their own cultural values and biases. An example of a performance indicator is that the person self-reflects on and has an awareness of their own values and biases with respect to culture and diversity. 2 says that the person demonstrates an awareness of their own values, of their beliefs, of their experiences, and of their preferences. 3 demonstrates knowledge of culture, diversity, and intersectional framework. And 4 demonstrates practice skills for enhancing cultural safety. So let's just focus on one of those particular competencies, demonstrates an awareness of all cultural values and biases. And the example of a performance indicator in this case is self-reflects on and has an awareness of all values, biases with respect to culture and diversity. So I'd like to ask you to take a moment, please, and type in the text box some things you might consider as a case manager as you reflect. So the question's asking, what might your culture, values, and biases be as you work alongside Larry? We'll just ask you to take a moment or two to maybe type in the type box things that you might consider. And I see a number of people typing, so thank you. Roles of family. Thank you, Linda. Age, diagnosis of schizophrenia first of all, okay. How he relates to his family of origin. And I guess the question is really too asking, how might you consider your own culture and biases? I might wonder, the importance of education, good collectivist individual cultural biases, excellent. My understanding of his cultural relevance, consider I am not his case manager, but a support person on his journey in his worldview. Gender, client's view on gender roles, cultural views and perspectives on mental illness, excellent. Is he currently connected with a community group within his culture? Interesting. It also says cultural background, values and beliefs he likes and dislikes. Okay. So as we thought about applying, I'm just going to move on. It is a waste not to use education that you have, level of education work, okay, and the meaning of work and family disclosure. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to move into some ideas that we had as we too began to apply this idea. And this work is really drawn from Lauren Lee, who provided a webinar on the PSR website recently. And she sort of helps us think about examples from a big picture. So considering, as people delivering services, our own beliefs about family, about illness, about justice, things about speech patterns and turn-taking, preferences for verbal and nonverbal communication, such as space or eye contact, our own ideas about status, power, religion, the validity of emotions, the purpose of relevance of goals, child rearing, conception of beauty, choice of time, and ourself in relation to others. So really, the idea of reflecting in this way is to consider ourselves within the context and thinking about what is not apparent. So in other words, developing our own awareness. And I see that people are still typing in information, so I thank you very much for your participation. Family still in another country, important as well. My culture places high value on education and would push me to encourage him to ensure his education somehow. So I really appreciate that, Christine, because you're linking your own notion of what education and the value of that. And I guess you're just explicating how that might influence how we might interact with Larry. So well said. So I guess our mission with this is to seek to know and understand the person's deep cultural beliefs to help restore people to optimum health and healing. So absolutely, self-awareness, Paulette, yes, absolutely. So pulling that together. So we're going to move to the next competency, and that is one of professional skills. So this is competency B. There are 4 sections in this area. The first of which is demonstrate ethical practice. We'll come back to that in a moment as a performance indicator of looking at the Canadian Code of Ethics. The second competency is demonstrates commitment to competent practice on an ongoing basis. And of course, everybody in the room is doing this currently as they are here to learn about the competencies. Display an awareness of diversity and power issues involved in professional relationships, I think a really important aspect as well. And the final one, which I thought really interesting, maintains personal wellness to ensure the effective provision of services to others. So it calls on us as service providers to also care for our own wellness. So I thought was really important as well. So just focus on that first one. And I'll just ask you maybe to think for yourself, if you will, at this point, about how the Code of Ethics might shape your practice in this regard. So as you're thinking about working with Larry, what might some of the things you might consider yourself as you consider ethics working alongside Larry? So I'll just ask you to think about that for a moment, and then I'll share with you some ideas I had. So I guess perhaps first on that might be to do no harm. Again, considering the use of power within the relationship, considering boundaries and maintaining boundaries, and keeping the client's best interests at heart. Perhaps the trauma literature in particular helps us also to consider about not adding to the stigmatizing experience for the person receiving service. And something that may or may not be complex, depending on where you work, is maintaining confidentiality. So these are just some big header ideas that we might consider as we're thinking about ethics and working with Larry. Penny adds, be an active participant to changing the culture of the mental health system by the person directly. And that indeed is part of the competencies, and it comes a little bit later on. Good point, Penny. Wendy says, what about honoring self-determination as a part of the power issue? Fantastic point, Wendy. Thank you. So we're going to move to C. Back to Larry. Okay, so demonstrating ethical practice. I'm just going to skip over that slide. So back to C, psychosocial rehabilitation practices and supporting services. So there are 6 components within this particular area. The first of which is possess an understanding of mental illness and the impact on individuals. 2 is understanding the interventions in psychosocial rehabilitation. 3, has knowledge and understanding of best and promising practices in psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery and their contributions to recovery. 4, knowledge and understanding of major types of recovery-enhancing interventions or approaches and their contribution to recovery. And 5, has knowledge and understanding of continuous quality improvement. Finally, has the ability to support individuals to deal with the impact of their mental health experience. So a broad scope within this particular competency category. So perhaps we can just begin to type again around what PSR services might be of value to Larry. So competency 3 is has knowledge and understanding of best and promising practices in psychosocial rehabilitation. And the performance indicator here is demonstrates the knowledge of particular interventions. So my work to you is please suggest things within the PSR literature that might be of benefit to Larry at this point. So 1 or 2 words are just perfect. Thank you. So we have goals on recovery, education on illness, client-centered approach, a home, a friend, and a job, Diane. Excellent, excellent place from which to move out to deliver service. James, welcome, says supported employment, cognitive remediation, psychoeducation. A student. Thank you, James. Fantastic. Appreciate that. Maureen says readiness assessment to identify area of priority. Thank you. Wendy says peer support. Thank you for bringing that there. Wendy, appreciate that. Christine says, what are his education and employment goals and what supports can help him get there? Fantastic. I really appreciate your participation. Thank you. So here I just draw on Dixon et al., the port studies around best practices for PSR, and I've identified supported employment, family-based services, psychosocial interventions for weight management, clubhouse, medication adherence, cognitive remediation, peer support, and peer-delivered services. So thank you. That's just a little bit of a summary of some things that we might consider. So I think I'm just going to hand it back again to Vicky, please, who's going to just take up knowledge of psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery-based services. So back to Vicky.
Thank you so much, Regina. And Matt, just psychosocial rehabilitation and recovery-based services. Now this was quite an interesting section where we went through and really went delving into we got to make sure that psychosocial rehab, recovery principles and values guides our practice. So one of the examples, for example, for the performance indicator of that was that we wanted to make sure people understand the central role of hope to the process of recovery. And that is something that we certainly use a lot, and I know that word, and I've certainly seen, even when you go around to different services, you see that sign in different ways, all about hope. So we want to make sure that people understand. That's very central. The other areas that we were looking at was uses knowledge and ability to implement PSR and recovery-oriented services. So it's not just good enough that you know about it, but you got to know how to use it. System navigational skills for folks that are acting as navigators or as some people say, case managers. I don't like that term. People aren't cases. They're not managers. But, whatever the system has around that, you got to make sure that you know how to be there and advocate for the person that you're walking beside.
Vicky, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, I did see that. Sorry, guys. Oh, Julia, do you really want to see me? Oh, you poor dear. Anyway, my apologies, but I forgot to click one more thing. And so now, regretfully, you have to look at me or ignore me. And the other thing is that we want to make sure that people are available to assess individual needs, create PSR, recovery-oriented service plans, individual plans, whatever folks call them. I think we're now calling them recovery plans, whatever. And make sure that we can actually say, yes, we do this and we measure the outcomes. No, we don't measure the outcomes. The individual who creates their own recovery journey, we work with them so they can identify how they're moving along on that. Now, we do have, and I think we've got enough time, so I'm just going, yeah, wellness plan. Sorry, Beverly. Great idea, whatever. So, so let's look at how might hope be central for Larry's recovery. Whoops, I don't want to show you that. I wanted to show you this. I wanted to say, how might hope be central for Larry's recovery? Okay, no cheating now. Don't remember what you just saw. But think about that. I'm just going to give you a few minutes for those of you who are with others. Maybe you want to talk about it. For those of you who are just sort of sitting there thinking, okay, how are we going to use this kind of information to move forward, to assist, to be there, to walk beside Larry as he's moving forward. The question is how might hope be central for Larry's recovery? Absolutely. Peer support, absolutely critical. Right, it's hard to get motivated to do anything. You know, there's one phrase I really dislike is when people say, you know, well, he's not motivated. Excuse me? You know, that's not the issue. There's other issues in there. The other one is when people need more services and they have to go into hospital for a time being. And, you know, sometimes people come back and say, well, how can there be any? Well, you know what? I always think that as a practitioner, that's part of my job, is to make sure when the hope is invisible that I bring it forth for people. That's part of my job. Maybe I'm a little whatever, but here we go. Can't move forward with a plan or hope, lack of motivation, clubhouse, yep, great. Strong family support. You guys are coming out with an awful lot of great ideas. That's absolutely awesome. You're right on the track there. And again, keeping focused that hope for folks. And Sharon, you mentioned step back, step sideways, step wherever. We're all moving constantly. And you know, as we keep on saying, every experience we have as individuals helps make who we are, helps make us stronger. So it's not necessarily that having to get assistance in this particular area right now is anything that's bad. It's just what it's needed right now. It is what it is. And I know I hate that phrase too, but yeah, absolutely. So let me move along and look at some of the things that we talked about. And as you can see, we've got hope bouncing up here. But frankly, I think you guys came up, oh, hi, Jill, came up with a lot of great ideas too. By being the father he wishes to be, he may experience hope. Maybe being involved in valued activities, and I'm thinking of the clubhouse folks also as well. And someone just said make life and work. Yeah, absolutely. Working may offer a sense of self-efficiency, and I think that's what we were trying to get to with the video, and certainly it'll be on this one, and it's also at our agency's website. It's round and about in a few places. And again, we're probably talking to the converted here. You guys all know how important that is. And meeting a girlfriend, or not, may enter a sense of hopefulness. So, you know, those are all ideas that would have to be explored with Larry. So I'm going to move on right now, and I'm going to talk about relational skills, absolutely critical. So when we talk about that we need to establish collaborative relationships with the folks that we walk beside, an example of that would be presenting opportunities for a meaningful exchange of information that strengthens understanding of each other and promotes the process of rehab and recovery-oriented services. So we really have to show that we really understand how we can share information and how we can build that relationship. Communication. Absolutely. That's got to be key. You've got to be able to communicate effectively. And you also have to be able to maintain and utilize your professional skills and knowledge. Again, it's not so much that you just know what it is, but you got to be able to do it. So we really focused on that. And I'm not going to spend much time on this because you can think about it later. And I believe we are recording this so that if you want to look at it later, you can. But you can also, think about using it like how could you establish a collaborative relationship with Larry? So some of those examples would be listening, demonstrating, understanding, trust, respect, honesty, empathy, just really listening. And I've seen, some of those things that are coming up in terms of the questions. Like I'm just looking at some of the chat answers you're giving back. Absolutely. What are his preferences? What are his wishes? What are his successes, challenge, and goals? And trusting in his ability to know what is best for himself. I had a staff member a few weeks ago, and I haven't seen the cartoon, and I would love to see it. Maybe some of you know where it is. But they had seen a cartoon of someone coming into an office that was, some sort of, office, counseling office, or some place where it was a therapeutic relationship. And this person, put down and said, here's my recovery journey as you decided it should be. And we all know that is not a collaborative relationship. This isn't about what we want. This is about what the person needs and they want and that they define. And finally, our last one is we're talking about social inclusion competencies. And again, another huge area that we're all very aware of, how it impacts on folks who have got mental health issues. So when we're looking at works with individuals to maximize access to work, education, and community life, I'm sure we all know how one of the greatest, I think it is, lack of income is one of the main issues around for folks who have a mental health issue. So we want to make sure that people have got that. So we assist them to build their skills to maximize their engagement and natural supports in the community, their life, their education, their work, volunteer or paid, whatever it is, in order for them to feel absolutely included in their community. We know that we need to do supports and enable advocacy for folks. We know that we want to make sure that that we prepare the community to identify and act to minimize social exclusion. And you'll see that when so many services are getting involved in anti-stigma campaigns and so on and so forth. I mean, that is really part of our positions. So how might you help Larry maximize social inclusion? A few thoughts around that. For example, assist individuals to build skills, we've talked about this, to maximize their engagement and natural supports in community life, education, and work. Volunteering, absolutely. Community prep is important, absolutely. We got all sorts of people saying all sorts of great things. Peer support, absolutely. Working as a math tutor, that's a great idea, absolutely. So there's a lot of ways that we can be there to walk beside Larry as he moves through this. And some of the things that we put up were, is he interested in a better job? Going for night classes, what would work for him? He wants friends. How would that happen? What would he be interested in? There's our clubhouse right there. May want to cook for friends. He wants a girlfriend, new family. He's doing internet dating. Is that what he wants to do? What else would he like to do? And he wants to be fitter. So how can he get involved in his community to enable him to reach those goals? So yeah, I like this, non-mental health resources. I think that's personally, I think that's a really important one, that, the people be included into their community so they become a part of it. So I really, really encourage those folks who are looking at that. So now I'm going to turn this over. We had a brief introduction to Dorothy. Dorothy, along being a many talented woman, is also the chair of our education committee. And this group has been doing copious amount of work in the last few years to identify what we'd like to do around education and so on and so forth. So she's going to talk to why the competencies are so important.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Okay.
Dorothy.
Perfect. Okay, it's great to have everybody. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about why the competencies are important. Vicky highlighted some of it before, but I'm just going to add other pieces to it. One of the things I always ask myself is, so what? We have this wonderful document. We've listed all the different areas around the competencies, so what? How could we use it? I'm hoping in the audience today we have people who are service providers. I hope we have family members. We have people who also are involved in training other people. Think of the competencies as a foundation piece. It's a foundation piece in the development of any educational or training curriculum. For example, as we teach individuals who would be providing care to people with mental illness, how do we introduce the set of competencies in their training? Are people fully aware what cultural competency means? Are people fully aware what social inclusion means? So that's one area why it's so important to talk about competency. The other one is also in the development of professional development activities. We all know that those of us in this field, we have passion for it. We also have responsibility to ensure that we are in tune with best practice or promising practices, whatever you call it. How do we keep up to date with what is happening so that we continue to sharpen our skills? And also to help the students, because in some places we have students who come to learn from the program. How are we teaching the students so that they also continue in their own professional development? This set of competencies also help a lot in recruitment. It takes a lot of work to recruit, to get the right person. There's a common saying that getting the people with the right attitude is harder than getting people who have the technical skills to do the work. So as you can see, this set of competencies are so broad. It also includes different aspects. The attitude is huge. Getting the person with that right attitude is so important. So think of incorporating it in your own recruitment when you're looking at planning a workforce and also doing interviews with staff. I know each organization have a different way of doing performance evaluation. Just imagine setting up a performance evaluation that is based on core competencies so that staff could actually get feedback on when they're doing good jobs. Some of the times we hear from staff, they only hear from managers when something is going wrong. But if we incorporate these core competencies in staff evaluation, staff wouldn't see it as being punitive. They would see it as a way of recognizing what they do well and also a way of identifying things that they could be doing differently. And continuing education and professional development, as I said earlier, it's critical in this field. A lot is changing in the field of mental health. So we have to support the staff we work with. We have to support the family, peer support, all the people in the field, even the clients that we support, so that people know what is current and also give them opportunity to learn about recovery. What does recovery mean for an individual? Taking into consideration their cultural aspects, how they learned, their community, and things that are important to them. Then, starting today, after this workshop, Vicky will talk about the next step. But I just want to highlight, though, what you could do starting today. It's really to get a good understanding of the PSR practice competencies. I think the workshop today has introduced some of it, but there's a lot more to learn, spending some time to review it. Also, asking your supervisor and your staff, even have it in a staff meeting. How could we start incorporating the competencies in the work we do every day? That should be the conversation we could be having with our staff. Form a group that talked about it, take each of the competency and kind of discuss it. And also, if you're posting job description, you want to know that you get the right people to do the job. So it would be fantastic to really include some of the competencies in the job description that you are offering. That could really help in recruitment. I've talked about the evaluation piece. The other thing that we could offer, PSR Canada can also, we're looking at adapting the tool a little bit so that you could use it as a self-assessment tool. For example, staff could actually, using a reflective exercise, go through each of those competencies and kind of rate themselves to get a sense of, how am I doing with this? In the case of Larry, we talked about, I think the first question there was, how are my own biases affecting, how individuals deal with Larry? For example, we all come in with our own values and biases. That's not a fault for anybody, but the question we're asking in terms of cultural awareness is that, do you have an understanding about your values, how it impacts the work you do with other people? So self-reflection exercise could really help with that. And imagine how we could use this set of competencies to periodically evaluate our program to kind of see how do we fit in terms of how we organize our work, in terms of our staff training. Do we have ongoing training for staff so that staff are competent in the areas that we're talking about? So there's all kinds of benefits on how we could use these core competencies. PSR Canada would also help in supporting any organization that is willing to use these competencies. We're looking at, we have an education plan. This is not on the slide. I'm just highlighting how PSR Canada could help. We have an education plan. Part of the plan is to roll out these competencies to the organizations and also offer some training on how the competencies could be used. We're also looking at developing community of practice for PSR practitioners across the country so that each region will have a resource pool that they could call on to or seek support from each other on how to move forward with the core competencies so that we continue to support individuals in their recovery. We're also going to reach out to the educational centers, the learning institution, because it should start with the training institution so that individuals who are learning to be mental health workers start right at the start to really learn about the core competency they should have in order to promote individuals' recovery. So most of all this information about the education plan is on the website. Yeah. Okay. I think Vicky, is this where you come back? Yeah.
Yeah, this is for me. Thanks so much, Dorothy. And I can't stress enough how much work that Dorothy and her team on the Education Committee have put into this. And the plan is up on our PSR RPS Canada website, so please have a look at that. But, you know, I mean, people are saying, okay, well, this is fine. Well, now what? Okay. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. So, first of all, we have signed an MOU with the Mental Health Commission of Canada to work together on a national recovery project. So that's a good thing. We're going to start to roll it out that way. We have also put together a plan, which is currently, it has went out, and we have chosen a successful group. And right now, we're moving ahead to do, I think it's supposed to be done by mid-May, a whole plan that will talk about how are we going to, it's not actually going to do it, but it's going to identify the scope of work, the different components we have to do for the education program required to support registry competency requirements, and to actually put together PSR Recovery Practitioner Registry for Canada. Now, we know that there are some available in other countries. Well, that's, he phones me. I don't think so. Sorry, guys. Really. So what we're looking for is to create a Made in Canada registry. Now, clearly it can't be a college because it's not going to be provincial, but it will allow folks, providers who are saying, you know, how can I be sure that an individual really is competent in this? They can be registered on the registry. And this is something else that our membership of PSR, RPS Canada asks us to look at. So we're actually right now, the commission gave us a grant to hire someone to start to put together, to scope out that work as to what it would look like. So we're very excited about that. And we're hoping that that will be done, as I said, before summer so that we can start planning the next steps. People have been asking about a copy of the competencies. Absolutely, it is now available on our website. Thanks to the Mental Health Commission, it is available in French. We're very, very thankful to them for their help in making that happen. And it's also available in English. I'm going to ask you, please, if you get a hold of a copy and someone says, oh, have you got the competencies, can you send it to me? We have not had any funding to do this. We have all, as volunteers, been doing this. So we have, we really need to go out and get some funding for this, but we also have to determine what the need is for it. So we would like, every time someone would like a copy of it, just send them to the website. If they are a member, they automatically, that's not a problem. If people who are non-members come in and say they'd like it, we're asking them to make a donation to either buy a membership, which for an individual, I can't remember exactly what it is, I think it's under $150 or something. We're asking them to buy a membership, again, so we can support these kinds of things that we're doing right now, the webinars, having a website, all that kind of stuff. And if they're not even able to do that, to consider giving us a donation. And if they're not even able to do that, they can still have the competencies. So we're not excluding anyone, but we are really trying to encourage people to give us a number, so at least then we can go forward and say, all right, this is how many people that are really interested in this. How can we get some funding to make it happen? As well as making sure that we have an accurate look at how many people are going to need this. So I'm really encouraging you, if you go to it, you know, even if it's somebody else in your same building or something else, because that'll be really helpful for us. All our membership fees do go to sort of keeping things like this up. I mean, obviously, this costs and able to do that. I'm just looking right now. How will this registry differ from the CPRP? It will differ because it is based on a Canadian, very much Canadian cultural issues, ethics issues, so on and so forth, like that. It is not going to be a certification. It is going to be a registry kind of thing. We are looking at the next steps after we get this report back from the consultants to say how we can do this. If you are interested in being involved, buy a membership and let us know. We're a very open group. We're always happy for more volunteers. So if this is something that you're really interested in, oh, stop, Matthew. All right. My happy face. I don't think so. All right, here we go. Sorry, guys. I obviously don't know how to push buttons. All right. So if you are interested, want to become involved, let us know. Almost anything. You can either contact Matt is probably, but even if you go onto our website, you can let Sherry know, who sort of monitors that for us, and so on and so forth. And then I look about, and then we're just talking about this again. We're just saying, guys, we just really need some help for funding this kind of activity. And as I want to reassure people, this is not going into anybody's pocket. This is going into actually making it happen. We have always tried to keep our fees very, very low, and there are special step fees depending upon your situation, your interests, whatever. But we really try to keep them very, very reasonable compared to a lot of groups because we want to be as inclusive as we can. Yes, the Canadian Code of Ethics should be up there. I asked that it be up there, and we're just not sure. So hopefully it'll be up there today. And I can check that out when I get back to the office. So here again are many, many thanks go out to all these wonderful people you can see on the slide who participated in one way or another in making it, and lots of others. I think of all the people who supported these people so that they could do their work, so they could do extra work, and so on and so forth. And one final thank you to each one of you here who participated. This has been a dream of many of us to be able to have a cross-Canada opportunity to share about what is so passionate for many of us. And I'd just like to thank you so much for showing up and making this a tremendous first. Regina.
Thank you, Vicky, for your wonderfully engaging talk. Thank you. So maybe we can just move into questions. But Vicky, just before I move there, it's wonderful to have you. So it is really a fantastic partnership to have everybody from all over Canada. And thanks both to Dorothy and to Vicky. I think just having your presence here today and having your commitment to this presentation has just been wonderful. So thank you. We're appreciative to you and to Dorothy and to the Mental Health Commission and to all of our partners. So it is really, truly an awesome day to have this broadcast all over Canada. So thank you kindly. If it's okay, I will start with the first question that I sort of picked out of the deck, and then others are coming in. So we'll do our best to audit those conversations, Matt and myself. The first one came from Catherine, and I don't know whether Dorothy or Vicky or both would like to speak to this, but the first was a comment about recommending that competencies not be included in the formal performance evaluation. That came from Catherine. I hope that I'm honoring your question correctly, but I'm not sure if Vicky or Dorothy would like to speak to that. And I think the intention of the question was really, you know, should those competencies, they should not be involved in the formal performance evaluation for individuals.
Yeah, and it all depends on how anybody does their performance evaluations. Like ours are probably, you know, like by the time you actually sit down and chat it, you've already chatted quite a few times about it. So I think it's what it does. It's more about an ongoing thing. I wasn't thinking of a formal, but maybe some people could do that. Dorothy?
Yeah. Basically, I think for some people, they may request that. For some, it shouldn't. I can see where they're coming from, because competency, it's really for professional development. There's some places that have incorporated the performance evaluation as one instead of having two different processes. Then for those people, definitely it could be based on competency, because people go to work, there's expectation that this is how you do your work. So it all depends on the organization. There's some flexibility in terms of what we are suggesting.
Thank you very much for that response. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. We had a question from Wendy. Maybe I'll just by Wendy about medication concordance and why that's in the competencies. Wonder if either Vicky or Dorothy you can answer that.
I'm sorry, Regina. Could you say the question again?
Really, I think so.
medication concordance. I don't know why I'm moving closer to the screen, but medication concordance, why that's in the competency.
You know what? There was a group of people working on that one, and I assume that they went, and I got to admit, I wasn't one of those people. That wasn't one of my areas. But I do know that a lot of time and discussion was put into that in terms of what is evidence-based, so on and so forth. So to try and answer it easily and quickly, I don't think I can. And as we know, some things will, we'll just keep on having to talk about and discuss out. But clearly the folks who were putting all of this together and we as a board determined that it was best representing the evidence that we had. There's also a group of people who believe that somehow that a medication treatment is not part of PSR, and I believe that that is an error. We look at the information and we know that medication is indeed a part of some people's recovery journeys, and we also want to honor them in that choice.
I support that, Vicky. I don't think there's anything else to add to that.
Okay. Regina, there's a question there from Nessa that the jobs represented are not the corner executive officers and teachers. I presume she's speaking about the video. And again, I'm just saying that that video was put together by our peers around their experiences. It was entirely their choice, and I honor that. That doesn't mean that there aren't people involved in all sorts of other activities as well. And that also means that we honor everything, no matter what level of responsibility that it has, is a valid for the people who have made that choice. So yes, absolutely. Every one of us. Yes, I have depression. So that's okay, and that's who I am. That's part of who I am.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you. I'm scrambling here for some more questions. There were many about fees and membership fees for PSR Canada, and so you'll find that on the website. But basically, I think individual fee without a journal is approximately $80. And that's for the entire year, and it is April almost, so this is membership time. But if you just go on to the website, you'll find those little things. So don't be disillusioned. The first part is all about organizational membership, so there's a lot of money attached to those first ones. But if you're interested in an individual membership, please just scroll down to the bottom of the page. Other questions? We'd love to hear from you.
Simon's got a question.
Oh, go ahead. Simon. Simon says, my concern is if med management is PSR, what then isn't PSR? Always asks a good question. Thank you, Simon. Vicky or Dorothy, would you like to respond to that question?
Well, I'll give it a try. Then Vicky, you could join in. I think when we talk about recovery for individual, we have to make sure that it's individualistic. As Vicky said earlier, for some people, they have testified that some medication works well for them. So as a practitioner of PSR, if we are supporting individuals' recovery, we have to look at all aspects, whatever helps the person in their recovery. Sometimes having a meaningful discussion around medication, the type of medication, taking into consideration the side effects will really help the person in their recovery. If an individual is going to work, I've also seen in my practice how when people take medication impact their ability to function. So if we're supporting recovery and one of the goals of recovery being returning to work, we need to pay attention to what is keeping people well. So if medication is part of it, I see it as being part of PSR to have that conversation. So that sometimes all it takes is changing the time somebody takes their medication so that they can wake up in the morning and go to work. I've seen clients that say, I want to go to work, but in the morning I'm so groggy. I still want to take my medication. But if we don't have that conversation, we cannot be truly person-centered in using whatever tools help the person in their recovery.
We had a comment from Susan saying that I believe the NED plan was assumed to be a PSR focused, i.e. a client-involved consultative plan. And I guess absolutely. And we also had a comment from Wendy saying, when could we possibly have a discussion with people receiving services around this topic? So I think we've hit a hot button here. So thank you for that. It sounds like that may be an area for further learning. As we think about the PORT studies, definitely medication management is part of those best and promising practices. And so I guess back to Simon's question around, does it live in a recovery-orientated practice? Does it live in a PSR practice? You know, how do we begin to think about that? Perhaps that's your question or perhaps not, Simon. But I guess as we look at a recovery-orientated practice, what we can be clear about is that PSR is really thinking about the tools, techniques, and approaches that allow people to maybe experience that notion of recovery. So it's what practitioners do to help people recover. So recovery being that overarching frame that we're aiming toward. So I'm not sure that answers your question. It's a good one, Simon. Thinking about conceptual clarity around PSR and recovery, and I guess that's my best answer. I'm not sure if anybody else has other things to add.
Regina, if I could just add that I think these are great things that we'd like to talk about more. Yes, we have our national conference coming up in Toronto in September, but I believe Dorothy also mentioned we'd like to set up community of practices. I would like this to be the first of many webinars. I'd like to see us have opportunities to talk about these kinds of issues among ourselves and say, okay, let's challenge each other as to where we're coming. I'd also like to see webinars that will be, you know, education focused. I'd like to see webinars where people can, you know, you can come on, you can highlight a practice that you're doing that the rest of us could learn from. I think the capacity for us having these kind of discussions and learning is endless. We just have to figure out how to do it with not a whole lot of money until we get some money. But yeah, but no, I think these are great questions, folks, and this is where we'd like to go.
I just want to add a piece. I want to make reference to Wendy's comments, which is really a good one. PSR doesn't talk about forced treatment. That's not PSR. Around medication, it's really educating people around the medication, the side effects, potential benefits, so that they can make informed decisions around taking medication, not people being forced to take medication. Forcing treatment is not a PSR practice. So I agree with what Wendy said there. Yeah.
So Christine says PSR Advanced Practices Planning webinars. Matt and Regina want to comment. We are looking for ideas. We're looking for things that are going to capture your interest and capture your heart. So if you take a moment, please, just to give us, fill in the evaluation tool. That's where we really want to hear from you about what you'd like to learn about. And so we will pull together some material and some experts to help us think about that. So thank you for that. Thank you for that comment, Christine. There's a lot of chats coming in. One of which was how much money are people interested in seeking? And another comment was, I think, important one too. Just a comment around there's not enough discussion around addiction in this conversation. I think the person meant. So that's a really good reminder, and I thank you for that. Certainly, what we're trying to advance is practice around mental health and addiction. So thank you for anchoring us in that conversation. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll just take a quick second to let folks know that in regards to the evaluation for today's session, it's going to be sent out via email with a link to complete the evaluation survey. So it'll probably be coming to folks with the certificate of participation and credit within the next week or so. So just to be watching for that in your inbox.
And
So we have
hopefully
probably about
be
3
hearing
minutes
from
left. I'm not sure if we have 1 or 2 more questions. Wendy's just saying she's appreciative of the language, Dorothy, so thank you. Dorothy rocks. It's good. We know that. Good. Any other questions that, maybe a last one, if we had a last question?
Is there a role for spirituality in PSR?
Yeah.
Oh, so Jackie asked the question, is there a role for spirituality in PSR? What a great question.
Yeah. I would say definitely, because spirituality is part of the person. So I think when you look at the detailed competencies, there's some areas we've talked about that, paying attention to individual spirituality, not necessarily individual's religion, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It's just, everyone, has a soul, whatever they define that is, their inner mind, spirituality, whatever people come up with. I mean, again, it's all back to the person. So,
And that may
thank you
include
again.
atheism. I think that was one of the comments as well.
Yep.
Okay. So I guess we'll just close the presentation for today. We again say thank you very much for being with us for the hour and a half. We're just really grateful that you've been with us. Thanks for some great feedback. We're looking forward to more, as Matt mentioned. And just again, Vicky and Dorothy, thank you so much. You really made this presentation come alive. So thank you both very, very much. And of course, to Matt, just really appreciate your calm nature as the world has its own way of how we should do these webinars and makes its own decisions. So thank you, Matt, for that. Thanks again, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to another time in approximately 1 month. Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Bye, Vicky.